Hello, everybody. Welcome tonight to the Round Table. I am Luca, and this is TJ.
Hello there.
And for tonight's edition, we are reviewing Secret of Nimh.
Yeah.
And Secret of Nimh is an 80s style animation about a widowed mouse named Mrs. Brisby who sets out on a quest to get a group of rats to move her family's home into a field before the local farmer mows over them with his tractor. She also gives medicine to her ill son to bring down his pneumonia. So, TJ, what are your thoughts on the movie?
So this is a very I find this a somewhat nostalgic film. This is one of the few. So this is a film I saw a lot as a child, which is a little weird considering how dark it is at times. As a little anxious around film back then. But it holds an interesting space in my brain because a lot of the imagery and the sounds have been ingrained in my cerebrum.
So, yeah, I agree with you on the colors. Like
Right?
I too enjoy them. I like the flashy scenes.
Yeah, the lighting. Yeah, I also really like the lighting effects.
Yeah, I
Like
feel
it
like
is definitely a
oh,
very
sorry.
one of the aspects they experimented with in its production.
Yeah, I feel like each color represents a tone of scene. Red means danger, blue means fear, green means mysterious, etc.
Yeah. I mean that's what colors are supposed to do. But you learned a little bit about production, did you? Did you
What do you
uh,
mean? Like in
like
general?
no, like you heard no, like you learned about it in class, correct? Oh yeah, we were talking about this ahead of time, but
Yeah, yes. I've learned about it in class.
was this more about this? Yeah, and did you guys mainly focus on the storyboarding or a little bit more on production?
Both. I've learned about it mainly in my
Design,
film class from freshman year and my color theory class. I find the film to be enjoyable. I wouldn't call it the best. Some scenes feel overwhelming, and the big number of minor characters make the movie feel cluttered.
I must disagree with you with those points. I don't think there's a good number of minor characters, but there's I don't think there's too many. Like it is like and plus the film is paced and written away that you're never confused. You know where everyone is you know where everyone is and it feels and they every and many of the side characters do serve a point like a lot in the story, even if it is fleeting.
Yes, but through the course of the film, Mrs. Brisby runs into a bunch of minor characters, and they each have their own motives that take up a huge chunk of the film.
I found them well implemented. I found them well implemented. It's not like the movie. I like. It's not like they were too complicated or complicated.
Yeah, but it should focus more on Mrs. Brisby and her family.
They do focus on her even when we do see the minor characters we are still looking at their family and how they work and the cluttered must disagree with you with it being cluttered but yeah, what was your fan of the minor characters beyond the points you've already said? I find them
Hmm. Well, I like Jeremy uh, Jenner and I like Nicodemus.
yeah.
But all right. So I think Jenner is a great movie villain, and Jeremy, I think he's funny. But the rest are just feel like clutter to me. Like their motives just manipulate the film's plot.
No, they don't. Like, what is no? No, right. I quite like many of the side characters. I like many of the side characters. I really like this. I really like the side characters, though. I like their yeah. I like how they're not all perfect. Like a lot of them are very flawed. A lot of them are flawed in ways that in other films they just make them the villain, but they're still, but that doesn't show up, and it makes them feel very realistic and very charming. charming. And I don't, yeah, and it's and I must disagree. Many of their motivations don't clutter up the plot. Like the closest thing we get is Jeremy's subplot where he's trying to find love, but that doesn't really interfere with anything. Yeah, I like.
True, but we get multiple scenes of the evil rats plotting, saying ooh, I'm gonna steal the amulet. I'm gonna kill Nicodemus. But
He never
power
says he wants to
will be
steal the
mine.
amulet. He only plots twice though, and that's halfway through the film.
Yes, and what about the Great Owl scene?
I found to be I really like that scene. I love how dingy, like it's one of those scenes that is carved into my head. I love how dingy his lair is, and I love the cobwebs and yeah, and all the yeah, and the creepy insects. It's just so full of atmosphere.
I
And the
mean,
Great Owl too is extremely well done. I
sure,
love
he's
his
a
design and
yeah.
how that's Nicodemus. I love his yeah, his voice is very memorable. His voice is, and I found him very yeah,
I mean, sure, the Great Owl
and
is
it's
a
a
great thing to look
genuinely
at.
creepy scene. Second,
The Great Owl is a good thing to look at, but all he ever does is tell Mrs. Brisby to go see the rats. She could have gone to Mr. Aegis, and he
but
would have
that
told her to go
doesn't
see the rats.
yeah,
Like, there's no point to having the Great Owl in the movie, really.
yeah, I found he adds in. I mean, I must disagree. He adds a lot. He adds a lot of intrigue. It wouldn't be nearly as creepy as Mr. Ages just told her where to go, and it is very and it would just yeah. He does have a and he does have a point. I don't think Mr. Ages would tell her about the rats. He doesn't seem to be not that he's cruel or neglectful. I just think so he's he's kind of secretive.
I feel like there's just more scenes of side characters chatting than there are of Mrs. Brisby going on an adventure to save her family.
There's plenty of scenes of her Mrs. Frisbee going to save her family. I mean, most of the time we are seeing she or her kids are in the scene, like when she's trying to save Jeremy, like she's the main person driving the scene until the dragon comes up.
Yeah.
Like when we see Auntie Shrew in their house, she's interacting with her kids. There's a lot of yeah. There's a lot of there's a lot of time given to Mrs. Frisbee and her adventure. How'd you find the world of the film?
The world, I think the world is quite well designed. I especially like the cave scene. It's dark, it's suspenseful, and the water inside the cave, it looks amazing. And the field, it's very it gives me like a very farm like vibe.
It's very it's very
Well,
tranquil.
not a farm. Like it feels like I'm in a meadow.
Yeah, so it makes you feel like you're in a field.
Yeah,
I
like
think
yeah, it's very artsy.
yeah, I found it. I really love the setting. I love how these fantastical images and this and this high fantasy esque imagery with all the airbrushing and detail is applied to this small world of rats and mice, and it gives it a very unique vibe and a very original premise. And I think it's very well done. Many of the environments are very memorable. I love the backgrounds are very well handled. Again, I love the airbrush aesthetic, and it's very yeah, and it can be very artsy at times. I do love how in a few scenes, I'm like with the rat scene, it almost looks like bone or something organic was made out of it. It feels very mysterious and intriguing. What is this place made out of? Like I'm thinking about Nicodemus's abode as an in particular a particular example.
Yeah. So, what do you think of the acting?
I thought it was very good. A big part of that is the writing as well. Especially, I love how characters kind of speak for each other at times, like in a way that is I wouldn't call it super realistic, but it feels very grounded and very organic, which I really enjoyed. It kind of goes into how many of the characters aren't super super friendly, which I really like.
Yeah.
Like many of them are having their own conversations in their head, which I really yeah, yeah, which just makes them very endearing. And I thought yeah, and the acting is extreme and the acting is very well done. It's very well done. There's a lot many of the many like it's a big part of how those characters become endearing, that even when even when they're saying things that are kind of rude or mean, there's still a warmth to them.
Mm. In my opinion, some characters were played better than others. Characters such as Martin, Jeremy, Nicodemus, Jenner, and Mr. Ages did well in their roles. The others sounded like they didn't care at all about the situations they were in.
They're not all consistent, but I thought they were well handled. Which characters you thought felt didn't do as well?
Like Mrs. Brisby and the all the rest.
The rats I could see, although I wouldn't say that they didn't care, although I could see that being being a aspect of their acting, like how they're not as good. But Mrs. Frisbee, she does a great job.
Yeah, Mrs.
I need to
Brisby.
look up her voice actor. I need to look up her voice actor because I am a
I have it
dumb
written
dumb.
down. Um,
Come on.
her
All right.
actor is Elizabeth Hartman.
Yeah, Elizabeth Hartman. Thank you.
So,
I'm
Mrs. Brisby, to me, she sounds very toned down and relaxed. Like,
I wouldn't
she
call her
hasn't seen the
relaxed.
show too much emotion in the more serious scenes.
She shows a lot of emotion, and I wouldn't.
Yeah,
Although I would agree with you that she's toned down, she feels is in a way that she feels very sensitive. Yeah. She's very motherly. Like in yeah.
but
I would say she has a and she does a good job in the emotional scenes, especially
yeah,
like in the tense scene. In the tense scene. She's a little. She feels frightened. Yeah. She feels like she's crouching into a corner, but that's appropriate for what's going on. That feels something she would do.
yeah, and also the scenes where she's getting frustrated or angry at other characters. She doesn't sound all that angry.
And she sounds angry enough. Like I wouldn't like her character wouldn't be doesn't well, I think it fits her character. She is very toned down. She's very low and and passive in a way that doesn't feel in a way that I wouldn't call it scratch passive. It that also feels appropriate to her. Like she doesn't like she is and she does come across as being annoyed. She doesn't there's never really a point in the film where she would really get too angry,
But she sounds like she's
but
mumbling when
annoyed.
she's annoyed.
Yeah. What?
She sounds like she's mumbling when she's annoyed.
Yes, people mumble when they're annoyed. Not everyone, but there are people who do.
Mm. But it gets to the point where we can barely hear her words.
I mean, are you saying you heard in the same thing?
Yeah.
Like you can hear her words fine. You can hear her words.
No, I can hear her in general, but whenever she gets frustrated with characters such as Jeremy, she 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 just sounds too quiet.
Because she's trying to be quiet because dragons coming.
Even in the scenes where they don't have to be quiet.
I never found her hard to understand, but I think she's yeah. Although I would agree with you that she is quiet. She is She is quiet.
Yeah, I think she could have had a little more emotion put into her.
She has plenty of emotion. How do you like the magic in the film? Like many of the more fantastical elements.
I found it to be pretty good, especially for an '80s movie. The magic was
Like,
well done.
and you mean this in the effects, or how did you find it
The
good for an
effects,
80s movie?
I found it pretty good.
Like, how did you find it good for an 80s film?
Like the effects are very well done, and
Yeah.
they seem a little advanced for an '80s film.
I mean, they can do some very advanced things with animation, even with Snow White. But I found it very, yeah. But I found them very. But yeah, I would agree that they were very well done. Apparently, yeah. I love the lighting effects and how they signify many of the more mystical elements. There's just a, I, and there's also just such a air of mystery to how things work. I mentioned that with some of the backgrounds and the world and the design of the world, but you're not but it's never explained how many of these more mystical elements are happening or how the rats because the rats are the main because the rats are the main people who use those elements, not the yeah, they're actually the only ones now that I think about it. But you don't know how the rats came across this power, and it's yeah, and
Yeah,
it feels very
it's a
intriguing.
question.
And also yeah, and it also ties into how this you feel like you're watching a small piece of a bigger world, but it still feel a world that is very engaging and very mystical.
I really like the green fog and the magic pen. Those things were fun to watch.
Say again? Green fog and what?
The
Oh
magic
yeah, the
pen.
magic pen. Yeah.
Okay, I have a little nitpick. So when Nicodemus looks through his magical ball, we see Mrs. Brisby in a green cloak. Do they want the cloak to be green? Is it intentional?
I need this, and this is when she's talking to Auntie Shrew, like when he's looking at her. Then
Yeah, when he's looking through the magical ball, we see Mrs. Brisby in a green cloak.
my best guess it was intentional. Like apparently they did a lot of work with Mrs. Frisbee, like making various color various color schemes for her depending on the environment, and I don't think this would be something they would miss. In the case as for why, I think it's to signify that she is being glanced through this magical thing, and that's sort of warping the image.
Yeah, but makes sense. What do you think of the amulet that Mrs. Brisby obtains from Nicodemus?
I really like it. I think yeah, it's never, again, one of the magical elements that's not really explained. Like we don't get a huge backstory as to how the rats acquired it, but I found it to be, but I found it to be a very good prop. It's, yeah, it's very, yeah, it's pretty. It's pretty. I like what it signifies. Bravery of the that being bravery of the heart, and I felt it had a very important, had a good role in the movie. I like,
Yeah, I found it to be a beneficial item to the movie, and I wish Mrs. Brisby would have used it more than once.
yeah. When she did use it, she really used it.
Yeah,
Like, I think, I don't,
I just want
was
to see
that,
more of it though.
yeah. I don't, no, I don't, I think it was handled quite well.
Do you have any other questions?
I don't, any other Any other questions? So what aspects of the film do you remember learning about? What did you learn about it?
We only talked about it in my storyboarding class. My teacher showed me thumbnails of Justin like taking Mrs. Brisby and Nicodemus through the cave in a canoe.
Yeah.
He told us it's a very suspenseful scene, and it's very very well designed, and it gives us a cave like vibe.
Hmm. Oh, Okay. And is this the scene where and is this the scene with with the lamp? Not the lamp, the
No,
light.
not the lamp on the canoe scene.
Oh, all right, all right. Oh, especially. Oh, this is a neat little detail I realized in my latest watch. I mean, this is slight spoilers, but the materials that the rats are using came from the mill, which I realized. Like you do see the like you see various pulleys, and even and I don't know what you would call this, and what like lampshades that you see them incorporate into their technology.
Yeah, I would call them pulleys.
Little detail. What?
I would call them pulleys.
Yeah, pulleys. Yeah. So, so what else from you?
What do you think of the transitions?
Yeah, I thought they were I thought they were very well. I thought they were quite well handled. There's a few. Yeah, there's a there's a there's a few there's a few there's a never mind. There's a I thought yeah I thought there's a decent variety. There's a good pace to there's a good pace to the film. Like it does, yeah. There's a good pace to the film. It's yeah. I thought they were interesting, although I don't have much to say. Yourself, what do you think of the transitions in the editing?
Transitions are okay. It's mainly just fading in and out.
Yeah, there's a few. Yeah, there's a few there's a few fade ins and fades out, but they don't really feel but they don't really tire their welcome. I thought, yeah,
Like
I thought
some just feel too quick, while others feel ineffective.
how so? Like they don't.
Yeah, because it just jumps to a bunch of random characters. It just cuts off from Mrs. Brisby's quest.
I mean, there's only I can really only think of two two examples, but those aren't very long. And the in the case in the case of one of them, I think that one which happens later in the film, I think that one gives enough. I think that cut gives a good feeling of levity as well as just shows us what's happening with the kids.
Yeah.
What else from you?
Any thoughts on the sword fight?
I really liked it. I thought it was very well done. There's a good amount of tension. I love how names. What is the evil rat's
Justin
name?
versus Jenner.
Jenner. I love how Jenner is very. I love the difference in Justin's and Jenner's characters, and how Jenner is very animalistic, and it was well animated. I found it to be good. So how did you find the tone of the film? Like how did you find the darker elements?
I have mixed feelings towards the darker elements. I get they're supposed to be scary and suspenseful, but it just doesn't feel like too much of a scare for me.
I don't mind. I mean, I'm not scared of it now, but I think it's scary. I think it's scary enough. I found it. Yeah, I think it's. I don't.
The only thing remotely scary is lightning flashes.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah. Well, it's not. Well, that doesn't make it. Well, that doesn't necessarily need to make it good. That needs to. Yeah. As long as it's provoke. Yeah. I do. As long as it's provoking a mood, which I do think it does.
They just feel a little like underwhelming and boring in certain areas.
Like where?
Like when the rats are talking and when they're planning to, like when they're trying to screw up the plan to move to the valley.
And I found that to be very exciting. I quite like that. I really like that scene. There's a lot of like even ignoring the darker elements, there is a lot of tension in there, and just tension in there. And
Like
just the,
sorry,
it is for a great atmosphere.
like the scenes where Mrs. Brisby and Mr. Ages and Justin are venturing through the cave. They had cool designs. I like the use of colors in them, but they weren't really frightening to me. They didn't feel tension inducing.
Yeah, I thought they felt. I feel that they made a good atmosphere and also just, and I think they did give it enough tension, and also for a kid, I think it would be frightening to a child, as a child who did see this, as a, yeah,
But
I
just
think,
curious, when
yeah.
did you first watch this movie?
I don't know exactly when, but if I were to give a number, I would say about three, around when I was three.
Ooh, three.
And yeah,
Interesting.
and that's yeah. So yeah, I feel like a lot. So I feel like a lot of the darker elements are dark enough to give an atmosphere and also frighten some children, but also not intense enough to make it inappropriate. Yeah, I felt that was really well done, and I do appreciate the difference in tone. It's not yeah. It makes the film feel very unique and engaging, I would say.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I think we can wrap it up.
All right, then let's wrap it up.
So, would you recommend it?
Yeah, I would. I would highly recommend it. I think this is. I think this is an outstanding film. It's not, although, yeah, a lot of the elements are very well done. I think it's very, yeah, the adventure, the adventure is engaging. The characters are likable, and the world is fascinating. And oh, fuck, and also the animation shouldn't be go unmentioned. It is very, yeah, I found it to be very beautiful. I love the textures, and this film has so much texture and light and wonderful lighting. It's beautiful. Yeah, and I love how the characters move, like in many ways like animals. It's very, yeah. I found it to be very well done. So I'd probably give it a. Yeah. I found it to be a very good film, a pretty good film. It's decently paced. I think it's okay. It might be a little intense for some young children, but I don't think there's anything too terrible. Like if you, yeah, like if you're like it's around the. Would you say it's around the same darkness, like the same tone as Coraline? Would that be fair?
No.
Fair analogy? No, you think Coraline's darker?
I think Coraline is darker.
And this is Sunday. So it's, yeah, I would say more. If this means anything, I think this would be a little around the same intensity as something like Paranorman. If
That's
that
fair.
means anything to you. What?
That's fair.
Yeah, and also for older viewers, I think there's a lot to appreciate, and there's a lot to appreciate. I'd probably give it an 8 or 9 out of 10.
Pretty high rating. So, I would recommend it for kids who are either in elementary school or middle school, or people who are cartoon fanatics of the 80s. And I would rate it a 6.3 out of 10.
All right. Then. So what do you have in store? So what do you have in store for us?
I want to review an animated classic from the 90s, Wacko's Wish.
Wacko's Wish. That sounds interesting. All right then. No. All right then. And thank you for your time, Luca. And I'll see you in a week.
All right. I'll see you. Thank you for joining me, QJ.
My pleasure.
Have a good day.